Indonesia. During the negotiations with the foreign minister of Russia, they will exchange opinions on a wide range of issues of bilateral agenda. They will talk a broader agenda and the advance of legal framework of our relations, as well as reviewing the key international regional problems. We'll publish more information about it in our official accounts. A very important international event. I'm talking about the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. It will take place in St. Petersburg on June 18th through 21st this year. It will be hosted on the Expo Forum Center. This forum has a reputation of authoritative international platform for dialogue between representatives of business, state structures, scientists and experts dedicated to global economy, sustainable development and technological transformations. The central topic of the forum will be reference points and the shaping of sustainable development amid digital global turbulence. The program will include more than 150 events. There is sustainable interest to the forum from the international community. In 2023, it brought together more than 17,000 people from 130 countries. In 2024, more than 21,800 participants from 139 countries. Following the latest forum, 1,073 agreements were signed. This shows a high level of confidence and business activity. This forum has been taking place since 2006 under the auspices of the President of the Russian Federation. It is organized by the Roscongress Foundation with the support of the relevant ministries. It is absolutely clear that this forum is an important tool of constructive international interaction aimed at development of multipolar worlds, strengthening economic stability and searching for balanced solutions amid modern challenges. Leadership and representatives of the foreign ministry will participate in relevant sessions and panel discussions of the forum on topics to do with global economy and trade, development of integration processes, regional cooperation, challenges in energy, food, technological development. Special attention will be given to BRICS and SCO forums, as well as a number of country-wise business dialogues. As usual, the Department of Information and Print will actively participate and is going to hold two panel discussions, the emergence of a just and sustainable world order through strengthening common values of the countries of the global majority and countering fakes. I invite all of you to participate. Our next briefing will take place on the sidelines on the forum. Let's talk about the relevant agenda about the situation around Ukraine. We talked a lot of things, but there are more follow-up questions about it. After the second round of direct Russia-Ukraine negotiations in Istanbul on June the 2nd, Russia immediately started to implement the agreements reached there. On June 6th, a list of 640 wounded and severely ill soldiers, as well as those under 25 years old, subject to exchange, was sent to Kyiv. On June the 9th, the first part of the young soldiers was returned to us. The second stage of the exchange took place yesterday on June the 10th, and I hope that the happy to be at home, that the country does everything it can to take them out of the end. I think that you saw their commentaries. Within the repatriation of 6,000 bodies of dead soldiers, on June 7th, Russia took the first party of 1,212 bodies to the border. However, the Kyiv regime shocked everyone and refused to receive them. Russia is fully prepared to fulfill the agreements reached in Istanbul. We expect the same approach from the Ukrainian side, but it is not the first and the only, but a very vivid sign of the terrible essence of the Kyiv regime. To confirm that its terrorist essence, the Kyiv regime continued to launch strikes against civilians and civil infrastructure of the Russian regions. For some reason, they continue to call people living there theirs. In the Belgrade region, on June the 2nd, in the village of Hotmyshsk, following an explosive being dropped from a drone, one man was wounded. In the village of Dobre, a drone attacked a van. Two men were wounded. On June the 3rd, 4 civilians were wounded. On June 5th through 7th, in Belgrade and other villages, following drone attacks, 13 civilians were wounded. An 18-year-old boy was wounded in Belgrade on June 9th. In the Kursk regions, on June the 2nd, the village of Skorodne saw targeted strikes against a school and a cultural facility. On June the 3rd, a Ukrainian drone attacked the village of Karavanovka, leaving a 31-year-old man killed. In the city of Rilsk, a 66-year-old woman was wounded. On June 6th through 7th, in the villages of Martinovka and Karish, following a drone attacked, 5 civilians were wounded, including a 65-year-old man. On June 8th, the enemy attacked electric substation Rilsk. The enemy drone also attacked the Cathedral of the Domitian there. On June 9th, the Ukrainian army targeted a cultural facility in the village of Prigrodnya, Slobodka. According to the head of the Perechinska village council, after the occupation in the village of Rusko Prechnya, there were no survivors. After the beginning of the incursion in the Sudzha region, there were 92 people, mostly elderly. Only 10 could make it out. Until the place was liberated in March 2025, out of 81 people, 48 died, 24 went missing. On June the 3rd, in the DPR, 20 items of munitions were launched. 2 civilians were wounded. In the LPR, the Ukrainian NATO dropped munitions on people at the shop of the village of Svatovo. 2 civilians were wounded. They also attacked a civilian vehicle. The driver was wounded. In the Zaporozhye region on June the 5th, following an attack, a 77-year-old woman was wounded. In the villages of Aloshki and Proletarka on June 4th and 5th, 3 civilians were wounded. On June the 8th, Rodansk, the attacks left a 56-year-old man wounded. The Russian courts continue to investigate crimes and to pronounce verdicts. Fighters of the Azov Nation Battalion, it was acknowledged on the territory of Russia. Sniper Ruslan Orlov and field medic Atom Novikov was given 26 and 24 years in prison respectively for killing civilians in the DPR. Four more Ukrainian fighters were given sentences in prison for armed blocking of the village of Lgovka, the Kursk region. They received 15 years in prison. Grenade launcher operator Sergei Stokos for shelling civilians in the village of Pogrivki, the Kursk region, received 16 years in prison. 23.5 years in prison was given to militant Danilo Ovcharenko. Now about those who sponsor this, who's behind this. On June the 4th, Brussels saw the 28th meeting of the contact group on, as they call themselves, defense facilitation to Ukraine. For the first time, it took place without any kind of presence of the U.S. representatives. It was presided by defense ministers of Germany and Great Britain. And the fact that all those present favor the escalation is seen in the cynical congratulation to the Kyiv regime with the attack on the Russian military air drones. Amid this, Zelensky started his same old story that it is necessary to start as soon as possible to supply them with air defense systems, but those are not investments in the Ukrainian air military and industrial base. However, Zelensky couldn't persuade his sponsors. The allies did not dip into their pockets and preferred to report on their own achievements to finance the terror activities of the Kyiv regime. Great Britain wants to allocate 350 million pounds to increase the number of drones being supplied from 10 to 100,000 items. What London has always talked about human rights, but they forgot about it. Since the beginning of the year, London sent 140,000 artillery shells to Kyiv. They also plan to allocate 250 million pounds for Interflex program. Germany confirmed that they will allocate 5 billion euros to help Kyiv. Defense minister, the so-called defense minister of Ukraine, Merov, boasted about plans of other allies to help to the Zelensky regime. For example, Norway wants to allocate $700 million for drones and $50 million to Trust Foundation of NATO mission to facilitate security and military training on Ukraine. The Netherlands will give 400 million euros for anti-mine ship, boats and sea drones. Sweden will give 440 million euros to procure artillery shells. Canada will give $45 million for drones, EW systems and IT solutions. Belgium wants to annually until 2029 give €1 billion, according to Merov, to support Ukraine and to give them an anti-mine ship. Belgium, Italy, Turkey, Sweden, Estonia wanted to participate in the work of the so-called EW coalition established at the previous meeting of the group. The get-together also expressed ideas to align the investments to the defense of Rammstein with the EU 150 billion, I quote, rearmament program. This is the testament to what NATO new infrastructure aims at. They don't care about the life of their own people or to find solutions to the issues that the region and the world faces. They care about using the Kyiv regime in Kyiv for their own purposes. But what are their purposes? It's a great question. We should address it to them. On June the 4th, France announced finance guarantees worth 1.5 billion euros for defense procurements from national companies. On June 6th, Defense Minister of France said that Renault concern launches drone production in Ukraine.
Lisbon plans to provide in 2025 military assistance to Kyiv worth 220 to 225 million euros. It is a testimony to the aggressive intentions of West European Kyiv allies and their maniacal aspiration to escalate the conflict at any price. And what about Ukraine itself? Well, we are seeing that forced mobilization is likely to happen soon. The Kyiv regime is forced to seek new forms of forced mobilization from February to June this year. About 1.5 million young people had to go through a medical commission. Those who were only partially worth or fitting for the military service. Previously, the Verkhovna Rada is considering a possibility of voluntary mobilization of men elder than 60 people. They are offered to sign a voluntary contract for 1 year and with a test period of 2 months with the possibility to cancel the contract. The Ukrainian Banderovite activist said that Ukraine is now at a stage where not only men but also women and young people from the age of 18 have to be ready for mobilization. Maria Berlinska stressed there was no need to proceed to such actions so far, but the situation might change, so the Ukrainian population, according to her, needs to be ready. On the 9th of June, the Ombudswoman for Education of Ukraine, Nadezhda Leshik, recognized that young people and young school children are going abroad. According to her, in the 10th and 11th grades, a certain number of children are enrolled in the 10th and 11th grades, but only few of them graduate from these classes. She also stressed that it is a result of the statements of authorities about the plans to a possibility for plans of the current Ukrainian authorities to recruit the 18-year-old this autumn. So the Zelensky regime is ready to sacrifice the young Ukrainians without any second thoughts. And now about the facts how Ukrainian citizens are punished for their dissent. The Kyiv regime tries to complicate lives for people for slightest dissent from the doctrines. On the 4th of June, Verkhovna Rada adopted a draft law about criminalization of bypassing economic sanctions. What is so surprising about it? Just look at it. This draft law criminalizes, in particular, unintentional violation of sanctions, not only by those who are subjected to sanctions, but also by third parties. Sanctions include a fine, a large fine of 425,000 up to 2 million hryvnia, imprisonment of up to 10 years, and possible additional punishment in the form of ban to take certain positions and conduct certain activities for a period of up to 15 years and confiscation of property. But once again, those are certain separate facts from different spheres of life, but they point to the need of the special military operation aimed at denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine and elimination of threats emanating from its territory. All the goals of the special military operation will be reached. Now let's talk about the assistance provided by the Western states to the Kyiv regime. At times, it's exactly the contrary. What they do on the 29th of May, the Globe and Mail Canadian media published an article under the name, I quote, "Satellite data shed light on Russia's modern-day gulags for Ukrainian children," end of quote. It is not a fake, it is something more. It is a disinformation campaign that has become part of the work of an information outlet. This article describes in a fantasy manner how certain NGOs for Canadian funds reveal in open source this information about allegedly missing Ukrainian children. They monitor social networks of social workers' children, study satellite data, and use artificial intelligence. In a word, they are working for the noble goal of bringing minor Ukrainians to Ukraine. Do they know that we have received a list of those whom Ukrainian regime considers as missing? It is about 300 people. Previously, they were talking about some millions of children. While according to the Canadian media outlet, it has been possible to liberate 129 people and mark or label 36 social facilities in which Ukrainian children are kept. I think Havel would applaud this article. Previously, we were talking about a well-established mechanism to search for children if they are missing, if there are any suspicions. If someone is looking for a child and considers it possible that the child might be in our country, it is sufficient to contact the office of Maria Zakharova, who is Russian ombudswoman for children's rights. And if the child is in Russia, there will be no hindrances to its reunification with the relatives living in Ukraine and in other countries. And 22 children from 15 families returned from Ukraine to Russia. On the 2nd of June, during the talks in Istanbul, we received a list of 339 children from the Kyiv authorities. Those are children who lost connection to their relatives, and we are studying each and every case. But it was not needed to wait until the direct negotiations. It would have been sufficient to write an email to Maria Zakharova. The Canadian article, well, I have to call it a publication, but in a sense it is simply fake news. Well, according to the publication, Yun Army is what they call Gulag. According to the pseudo-journalists, Ukrainian children are allegedly forced to assimilation. They are banned from speaking Ukrainian language and allegedly they are forcibly detained. Well, let's look into it. First, participation in the Yun Army movement is a voluntary thing. Have you ever seen children who would be tied, who would be forced to travel somewhere to sing songs, to say poems? Have you seen such children in your army? I haven't, but Canadians know it better. They have seen it from satellites. Secondly, it is only upon permission of a legal representative that a child may join the UNARMY movement. The goal of the movement is multidimensional development of a child's personality and meeting their needs in moral and physical improvement. How are these goals achieved? By means of development among the young people of principles of collectivism based on the principles of justice, equality, unity and responsibility, love for the people, respect and tolerance. It was a quote. Has anyone in Global Mail read the document? No, they have seen the satellites. They know it better. Where have they seen a ban to speak any language, including the Ukrainian language? Where have they seen any references to hatred against Ukrainians or other nationalities or religious groups? There is no word about Ukraine in the documents of UNARMY. The Canadian media outlet who published this terrible article didn't mention that in Ukraine itself, children for many years have been taught to hate the Russians, the Russian language. They are trained to kill Muscovites, to kill them with knives, to glorify Bandera and Shukevich and other Hitler accomplices. In the Ukrainian country, there is a network of children Nazi camps, and the tutors, who are the tutors, fighters of terrorist organizations prohibited in Russia. I'm talking about Azov and the Right Center, who sponsored it. It is sponsored by the state, and the funds are received from abroad. When did it all start? Long before the special military operation 2015, 2017, 2018, 2019. In Daily Mail, NBC, Associated Press, El Confidencial and other media outlets published articles about it. Doesn't the Global Mail read it? Well, it's time to do so after such shameful publications. Western media were shocked by the level of hatred, aggression, militarization of young Ukrainians. And they openly confessed their hatred to Russia. In April, the Zelensky regime announced about the creation of resilience preparedness centers, which were to be opened in all regions of Ukraine in order to train those who would be engaged in subversive activities, and fighters of neo-Nazi formations were to become trainers. I quote Deputy Head of President's Office of Ukraine, Irina Vereshchuk. On the 23rd of May, she wrote, whether there are peace agreements or not, according to her, Russia remains our enemy for decades to come. If not for centuries to come, while she can guarantee what is to happen in centuries later. According to Vereshchuk, our children should be ready for it. They should know what war is. Global Mail hasn't read it. It's a shame. The Kyiv regime has opened militarized neo-Nazi camps in Ukraine. they resemble Hitler Jugend, and the resilience centers is exactly an analogy of the territorial militia Volkssturm. The Volkssturm was established in the final years of fascist Germany in order to involve the civil population to hostilities, but we shouldn't forget how they ended. Then, 80 years ago, the Führer committed suicide as he was afraid of punishment, and those Nazi leaders who were alive faced the Nuremberg tribunal. Yes, many of them and cannot know that full male well were welcomed in some Western countries. The Zelensky junta is ready to sacrifice the future of Ukraine, the children, the young people, for the benefit of the neo-Nazi regime, but no British, no Canadian, no French or German media outlets are likely to write about it, although we see that even in those countries there is a growing number of those who want to see the truth. Why don't they write about it? These countries sponsor the Kyiv regime. They don't want to see the truth. They have to escalate the crisis. They have to bring the confrontation to a new level. There is no place for truth. And they are absolutely not worried that the lives and the future of children and young people are at stake. Now let's talk about the IAEA activities and the situation around the Zaporozhye NPP. From the 1st September 2022, members of IAEA Secretariat visit the NPP upon invitation of our country. They see regular shellings on the part of the Ukrainian armed forces of the NPP and its city satellite Energodar. The goal was to force the Kyiv regime to show greater restraint towards the NPP and its personnel. IAEA experts communicate with the heads and staff of the Zaporozhye NPP and supervise and monitor the radiation levels and participate in the control events in the station. Given the regular attempts to present the experts at the NPP as a mission allegedly sent upon the request of Ukraine, we stressed that we are talking about the presence of a group of experts of the IAEA Secretariat who visit the NPP based on the arrangement between Russia and the IAEA leadership. In 2022-2024, rotation happened as the line of the contact line. However, there were lots of provocations, so we decided that rotation will happen through the territory of the Russian Federation. It was a sign that we are ready to provide the safety of IAEA experts, despite everything that is done by Ukraine. Members of the IAEA Secretariat have the possibility to observe the provocations committed by the Kyiv regime. In particular, on the 5th of June, there was a series of attacks by Ukrainian armed forces against the training center with the use of drones. Under the pressure of Western countries, the IAEA leadership doesn't dare to say that Ukraine is to blame for threatening the nuclear safety and security of the NPP, although the IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi witnessed attacks on the part of the Ukrainian armed forces. From our part, we regularly inform the IAEA member states about the provocations by the Kyiv regime about against the Russian Zaporozhye NPP. We also distribute and disseminate the information circular letters. During the press conference on the 27th of May, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General Stefan Dujarric voiced a statement which is incompatible with his status of a high-level or high-ranking Secretariat's official. Antonio Guterres condemns, according to him, the large-scale Russian attacks against Ukraine on the 24th and 25th of May, but according to Dujarric, Mr. Guterres is only concerned by the attacks of Ukrainian drones against the Russian territory. According to him, the Secretary General ignored the fact that Russia only hit the military facilities of Ukraine, whereas Ukraine deliberately attacked the civilian population of our country. Russian strikes were presented as an established fact, and attacks by Ukrainian drones were presented as reported attacks. But it's a shame a representative of the UN shouldn't make such statements. We consider such statement by Antonio Guterres, as it was attributed to Antonio Guterres, as a sign of the bias and double standards in the UN leadership. Secretary General and his team members keep silent about the glaring violations of international civil humanitarian law by the Kyiv regime, or in the best case, they would call both parties for constraint, and they do so in situations when all facts, all evidence points to the responsibility of the Ukrainian armed forces.
There is no compassion, there is no mention of human rights, there is no remembering the suffering of many people. We have repeatedly called Antonio Guterres and other senior UN officials to condemn the terror attack against the Kursk region in 2024 and other documented notorious crimes of the Kyiv regime. For example, representatives of the Secretariat have avoided these substantial comments and called for restraint and independent investigations. Yes, that might be the case, but everyone should be called upon to exercise restraint. Some elusive wordings are to be found, and to underline that there is no data on the basis of which specific conclusions can be made, but it's only one-side way. During the press conference on the 3rd of June, Stefan Dujarric mentioned the explosions of breaches in the Bryansk and Kursk region, When a Russian journalist asked whether Antonio Guterres would like to condemn these atrocities, he said about mourning about all the civilian victims that were caused by the Ukrainian conflict, but it should apply to all the sides. And the UN Secretariat's officials just repeat the insinuations of the Western capitals to discredit our country. They do not cite reliable sources of information and do not check the facts. Antonio Guterres just flagrantly violates the ethical norms of an international officials and the UN Charter, in which there are requirements to adhere to an equal line, equal policy. And the UN is not to act as an honest broker in this case, in the Ukrainian crisis. And Antonio Guterres, we hope that he will avoid those Western political adventurers and occupy a neutral position on the Ukrainian issue and do not allow such ill-considered and non-objective statements. We have supported his fight with pandemics, and he should not become a sponsor of infodemics. Now some words about this aggressive mentality. In the geopolitical dimension, international geopolitical dimension, the NATO countries have drawn attention to American plans to create yet another project of Pentagon, element of Richardson military base, where pilots, NATO and American pilots will be trained against a nearly equal adversary under the name of which they consider Russia and as well as growing challenges on behalf of China. And Alaska is presented as an important bridgehead for defense in the Arctic. It's not surprising, because under far-fetched pretext, the United States and NATO continue to recklessly pursue a course of active militarization of the polar region, expanding their military potential in the region, often of an offensive nature. Such steps are not conducive to strengthening trust in the Arctic and undermine confidence. The Arctic region has been long considered as a territory of dialogue, and the Russian Federation has never threatened anyone in this region, and we will further take all the necessary measures to protect our legal interests, national interests in the high latitude, and guarantee the security of our country at the northern borders. Now some aggressive actions, extremely aggressive statements by NATO Secretary General REUTERS on the platform of the London Chatham House Institute of International Relations. He spoke about a better NATO. So what should a better version of NATO be? You would think more effective or working for the benefit of the people who comprise this alliance? Or maybe having specific purposes for building, constructing peace or maintaining peace, but no. As Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, mentioned, NATO should become stronger and more lethal. It's just some evil words. NATO should make a quantum leap in its development. What do you think? Again, because of Russia, according to Rutte, because Allegedly, danger from our country will not disappear even when the war in Ukraine ends. Why is that done? It's understandable to intimidate the citizens of NATO bloc. It's just some far-fetched formula wording of NATO strategies that Russia allegedly could be ready to use military force against NATO within 5 years. But that's just statements. If we have a look at the real situation, Russia is actually now using the military force against NATO by defending against NATO threats, terrorist attacks by the Kyiv regime. That's what the NATO Secretary General should have mentioned during all those conferences, how they have turned their political puppets in Ukraine into terrorists and extremists, how they have unleashed a hybrid war against our country and actually are a threat to security of the global majority. But now their rhetoric is different. In order to avoid the developments invented by them, Brussels thinks that they should significantly grow the military potential of a military and industrial complex. Anti-missile defense increase is planned at 400%. Otherwise, as the Secretary General of the alliance mentioned, they would have to learn Russian. Here I can agree, because they should start now, but the motivation should be different. Why are they so afraid to study the Russian language? I do not understand. If they had learned this Russian language earlier, they wouldn't have committed all those silly actions. They would not have such ideas to abandon us with all our culture, our economy. There would be just no attempts to play their stupid games. They would have just other thoughts. They're starting to realize that they should study the Russian language. And they can do that. He's talking about NATO becoming stronger and more lethal, but just repeating that it's a defense alliance. Where has NATO defended? Just give me one example during the last decades. Now this bloc is getting ready for a war and just pointing at their future adversary. Now they have invented that lie and growing their military potential. So there should be no doubts among the citizens that that is not the case. This bloc is aggressive, and it is still trying, according to its Secretary General, to become more lethal. Now, about the horrors of Russophobia, the Finnish parliament has adopted a law on a ban to purchase real estate by citizens who allegedly present a threat to the national security of Finland. It's just a good slogan for real estate agencies in Finland. I think it's about the US citizens. I hope so. About NATO bloc representatives, about the citizens living in NATO countries. When they say that those countries and countries who violate the sovereign integrity of other countries. Now maybe in Finnish parliament they would repeat the history of bombing Belgrade. Who has committed that? And citizens registered in such states according to those wordings of this law. It's just understandable who they mean, or the citizens of which country that have been recognized as a threat to Finland. It has initially been conceived as something, another Russophobic act. And now everything has become completely clear because Belarusian citizens are also concerned here by those restrictions. Just I beg your pardon, in the last decades, who has Belarus attacked? I would just like to know the list of the victims. I'm just not aware whether the Finnish parliament knows the geographical location of those countries. Because maybe if the Finnish government makes decisions on the basis of this draft law, they could be just interested in the geographical location of a country. Because it's just citation. Minsk has an interest of supporting Russia, and although it does not have its own desire to undermine the national security of Finland. So who will just decide to purchase real estate in Finland? Who does the Finnish parliament harm? Primarily its own country. It's just Russophobic fears, attempts just to build walls between our countries by all means. And regarding human rights, violation of human rights by Helsinki, like closing the border with Russia and segregation on a national basis. How did that happen? If a person is from Russia or from Belarus, his human rights can be violated. The Finnish people have hardly separated from the horror that hardly avoided the horror that would have happened if Finland would have turned into a Nazi state. We all know about those horrors on the examples of the history of Western Europe. It was just one step from that. Has anyone remained in Helsinki who still remembers that? But against the background of those trends, there are other trends that are becoming more and more obvious. There is a preservation of national sovereignty and respect for the will of their own people. The example of the Slovak Republic. A considerable part of the Slovak society has disagreed with the anti-Russian sanctions imposed by the European Union. It has been around 400,000, nearly 500,000 signatures of Slovak citizens for a referendum to abandon restrictive measures against the Russian Federation because they are detrimental to the country's economy, businesses, and the welfare of the population. According to the number of population of Slovakia, it's a large-scale support of this initiative, and Slovak parliament members have adopted a resolution that allows to occupy a stance against the new anti-Russian sanctions at the level of the EU. That would allow to protect national interests and ensure the welfare of its citizens. Yes, the democracy is declared within the EU, so let them listen to their own people, because the majority of their own people does not even have the right to vote, because when they are trying to express their opinion, they are being told that all that is inappropriate. The EU policy under the pressure of specific NATO states is detrimental to the EU countries because the direct losses of the European businesses have grown and have exceeded 1.3 billion euros. Against the background of legitimate political discussion, the European Commission continues its confrontational policy. You will not believe it, the 18th package of sanctions against our country has been announced. Where is the depth of the democratic procedures? On the basis of what are those sanctions, those measures prepared? Is it required by the peoples? Who has required that? Which countries? Which peoples? Of course, it's an ideological position. And they're unable to hear the voice of the European peoples. It testifies of the lack of democracy within the EU itself. Of course, sooner or later, the pragmatic approach will prevail in the EU countries, and the abandonment of sanctions will facilitate the beginning of the discussion on the European continent, and will be in favor of security. Now about the World Coordinating Council of Russian Compatriots meeting in the Victory Museum. It's the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War, and issues of falsification of history and preserving the historical memory. I would remind you it will be held in Moscow on the 29th, 30th of October 2025. Attention will be paid to educating young people, promoting the Russian culture, and the conferences of compatriots living in the countries of Asia, Europe, and North America. And there will be also the work of thematic commission and the flower-laying ceremony in the Hall of Memory and Sorrow at the Victory Museum. But actually, our compatriots, they just face immense pressure now. The Foundation for the Support and Protection of the Rights of Compatriots Living Abroad has fallen victim to such persecution. This mechanism has been established by Russian Foreign Ministry, and it's about assistance to our compatriots. Law and humanitarian assistance in difficult living conditions. Now, on the website of the foundation, a detailed statement has been published. There will be a link to that statement in the Today Briefing text version. For the third year in a row, the foundation, it just worries a lot inveterate Russophobes. This organization just helps people without count their ethnicity, their nationality, protecting their legal rights. It's a human rights organization, but it's just a large-scale provocation to distort this noble mission. It's defamation. And the time has been chosen for that by the government of some European countries, the Nazi regime-supporting countries. They're finding ways, looking for ways to harm our country. Now they are attacking our compatriots, the assistance that our compatriots get, sometimes in just very difficult situations. In many cases, because of the harassment and persecution in Western European countries.
Now they got millions of those who, despite pressure, support the policy of the Russian Federation. They want to threaten those people and punish them, to influence them. That's how Russophobia looks like. The aim of this campaign is clear: to compromise the foundation, to push it out of Europe, to threaten its partners, and what's more important, to make or even to force compatriots to refuse their ties with the motherland. I'll reiterate, the foundation does not cooperate and has never cooperated with special services. No representatives of special services working among this foundation. Other words and statements are lies and provocations. Majority of allegations are reduced to banal ideas about cooperation with Russian special services for the interests of operations of influence on the territories of the EU countries. The basis for the so-called investigations is the information received after the email of the foundation was hacked. They did it on purpose. That's how a civilized world looks like. You have been looking for hackers. Now find them in among your own ranks. The main purpose of the foundation, tried in its establishing documents, is to facilitate compatriots living abroad, to ensure their rights and legitimate interests. Our efforts aimed to create necessary conditions for discriminatory living of compatriots in the countries they live in, because they seriously contribute to economic, cultural, social prosperity of those countries. Will continue be guided by the principles of international law and to provide all the necessary legal help to compatriots. We received a lot of questions about the situation between Iran and Israel. We see more frequent reports in the media about more tension between these countries, including speculations about possible attacks on the nuclear facilities of Iran. It doesn't take a military expert to understand that such adventures are fraught with long-lasting humanitarian and radiological consequences for the region. In 2024, amid continued escalation in the Gaza Strip, confrontation between Iran and Israel already escalated. Back then, Tehran and West Jerusalem launched a number of mutual missile strikes, but the region managed to avoid a big war. However, now we're sure military means won't help settle the existing differences. We call on both sides to abstain from the steps leading to further violence and spiraling of the situation out of control. We expect results from indirect dialogue between Iran and the US. As far as we know, the next round of the consultations may take place in the nearest future. We believe that only diplomacy may give mutually acceptable solutions based on international law and coordinated balance of interest. On June 15th, the ASEAN Center under MGIMO University celebrates its 15th anniversary. This center has become one of the key tools to promote the cooperation between the association and its countries with Russia in various spheres. In 2023, it launched a 2-year master's degree at MGIMO University of specialists from Russia and 10 countries of ASEAN. The center helps expand channels of interaction with partners, including through the network of scientific and research centers ASEAN Russia, the second track of ASEAN Regional Forum on Security, and Asia-Pacific Council of Cooperation and Security. Its effective work is recognized in many countries of the region. We would like to congratulate the leadership and the employees of the center and wish them success and all new initiatives. All of this is very important given the global turbulence. On June 11th, 12th, these days, Kazan hosted the third International Forum of Education Ministers Shaping the Future. This event is organized by the Minister of Education of the Russian Federation together with the Cabinet of Ministers of the Republic of Tatarstan. The aim of the forum is to coordinate efforts in education that is one of the most relevant for international humanitarian cooperation. This work is in demand. This is clear from the fact that some 112 high foreign guests from 43 countries came there. A video address by President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, was sent there. He underlined that a free, equal access to knowledge, technologies, and scientific achievement is the basis for sustainable development, just and secure multipolar world. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in his video address stressed that the goal of Russia is to develop a mutually respectful partnership in education based on cultural and civilization and diversity in the world. The delegates will exchange experiences and discuss issues of strengthening national educational systems. We sure that the dialogue within the forum will be extensive and the recommendations worked out during it will be implemented practically for the good of the citizens of our countries. And as the last topic of our first part of the briefing, I would like to mention the holiday that we celebrate tomorrow. On June 12th, we celebrate the Day of Russia, and our leadership will say a lot about it, as well as ordinary people. This day will see a lot of events, people's events, sporting events, concert, exhibitions. Major countries will host big celebrations. Smaller towns will host very cozy celebrations. This all the places in Russia will do something reflecting its uniqueness. The new entities of the Russian Federation also will celebrate this holiday. The Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, Zaporozhye and Kherson regions. With a special feeling, our soldiers, the heroes of the special military operation, will celebrate this date. As usual, the celebrations will take place abroad, at Russia's diplomatic missions, at the platforms of the UN and other international organizations. And of course, we'll be joined by our true friends, Russia's friends, who sincerely share our commitment to a more just, polycentric world order, free of dictatorship and new colonial practices. With a feeling of pride and joy, we celebrate Day of Russia, a holiday of sovereign, independent state with great past moving forward. The state with huge economic, scientific, intellectual capabilities. We will preserve the ties between generations and values, and we will overcome all the tests and challenges we face. I congratulate you. Happy Day of Russia. We have
observed closely, these malpractices are for financial gain. Therefore, having a verification mechanism at the payment stage could resolve all three issues in one go. To protect the interests of investors, SEBI introduces valid UPI IDs. These UPI IDs
it means. But every time, I suggest everybody to listen to our hymn and see how it describes Russia and our people. I am prepared to take your questions. This is International Affairs with us. Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Congratulations on the upcoming holiday, you too. We have the following question. On June 4th, during an interview to Financial Times, Prime Minister of Moldova said that Russia ostensibly is interested in the victory of the Moldovan opposition in the upcoming parliamentary elections in Moldova because it will give the possibility to Russia to deploy Russian